guys.
A shit show, a pure shit show. It literally takes a village. Like,
I don't know if it was dirty or clean.
oh my God.
Bad mom.
Like
Yeah.
on wild.
Yes.
Because I'm shining.
Woo! That was good, guys.
All right, ladies. So before you had your kids, what did you envision your mom bod to look like? Like for me, before I even thought about kids and had kids, I always heard people say you get more like curvy after you have kids, or your hips get wider, whatever. So I always envisioned my body to be curvier and like the hourglass, and I am far from it.
You are hourglass.
You look great. You look great. I mean, you know.
Thanks. But that's not what, like, you know,
That's not what
before
your
I,
plan.
yeah.
No, I hear you. My mom always had like a very curvaceous body. Like she always had big O double D's and like a big O butt, you know, and I feel like I would swear she had a smaller waist, but she was always insecure about that. But I definitely felt like she had like a curvy, voluptuous body. And I was so excited to grow up and be like that because I was a stick figure my whole life. And I'm like, I can't wait till I just get some banging curves, you know? And no, I don't have that curve, you know, and my boobs never grew like hers. Like my sister has more of her shape when my mom was younger, like the big old boobs.
But did she get that after she had her baby?
No,
or she was always like that.
Oh. Yep, she had it before.
What about you, Roni? Because you got those curves.
Whatever. No, honestly, for me, like I just thought that I would like get these massive like boobs. Like I was so happy because they're like, oh, pregnant boobs are like amazing. They're like jumbo. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so excited. But they didn't tell you that after they deflate. So that was kind of my envision, and it didn't happen.
Okay, so before kids, Roni, what was your cup size?
Damn.
Before kids,
you know how we do it here.
Before kids, I think I was a 36C. And now I'm still a C, but just a 38 now.
So they did get a little bigger.
A little bit, but that's just probably because
mine
they got a little droopier.
Smaller.
Yours got smaller? Well, okay, so what did you start with?
I don't know. I think I was like a 36B, and I'm like a 34B.
So you dropped.
36, 34.
But you know what? When I was younger, I also probably didn't know how to wear.
That's
like, you
true.
know how they say you don't, like most women don't wear the correct bra size. Yeah. I don't know.
I still feel like I don't have the correct.
Me too, because me and my sister will go to shopping together, and she has big, huge knockers. And like I could fit into her bras. I don't fill them out, you know, and she'll just give me like her bra if it doesn't fit her anymore or whatever. And it says like D on it, and I know I'm not a D, you know, like I know
some bras are
in denial, but some bras I could fit into a D, but it's like it's a fake D. I just feel like a phony. I feel like a phony. I still get clowned though. Like my mom will make fun of me because she'll be like, "Oh, you're still so flat chested," or she'll like make comments.
What's your actual size?
Huge. I really think I'm like a C. Like a full C, like a 34, 36C.
I think you're a D.
No. And that's another thing. Like, it just depends on the shape of your boobs, right? Because, like, I feel like some people have wider, some people have longer, you know? And I feel like mine are a little bit, like, short and stout, you know? Like,
I'm definitely one of the longer folks. That would be me.
Like, you know, so like it just depends. That's why I feel like maybe I fill it up because I'm like wider, but it's not, you know, like I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, you know. Anyway.
Well, now that the world knows our cup sizes.
Okay, Rachel, thank you so much for coming on the show today. We're so excited to have you drop some knowledge about how to embrace and accept your body, right? Especially after babies. So tell us a little bit about yourself and the mission of your podcast.
Sure. So my name is Rachel Coleman, and I'm here representing myself and my co-host, Tina LaBoy, because she's sleeping in Texas right now. We're the co-hosts of the podcast Mom Jeans. So I'm a therapist, and I have a private practice here in Orange County, and Tina is a registered dietitian. And so together we try to combine our clinical experience and our life experiences and our mom experiences to try to help people just break free from the pressure of feeling like they have to change their body, they have to look a certain way. We try to call out diet culture and teach people about the lies that are being sold to them and just understand their beautiful genetics so that they can love what we say the genes with the G, and then also the genes, the external genes with the J that they're living in.
I love it. And
Very
so
clever.
yeah, I love it. Yeah, the name of your podcast is super cute. So why did you guys choose to go down this route and help people accept their bodies and relationships with food?
Sure. So my background is that I grew up pretty surrounded by diet culture. I grew up with a mom who really openly expressed dissatisfaction with her body pretty much nonstop, and a grandma, so my mom's mom, with severe disordered eating habits. I mean, even to this day in her 80s, she's struggling with body acceptance. So I just grew up feeling like their behaviors really were constantly sending the message that only certain bodies were acceptable and the rest were to be very ashamed of, including their own. So I don't know how I got off without suffering from an eating disorder from all of that, but I did grow up just really having to do a lot of unpacking about bodies and social media pressures when I got older and things like that. Tina, she grew up in a more opposite manner, actually. She grew up in a home where bodies weren't really focused on too much. Diets weren't really discussed, but we met working at an eating disorder treatment center together, and we both really learned a lot about how important body inclusivity is in our society. The social justice component and the advocacy work that is in our field is something that's really important to both of us. And just really realizing that body acceptance is both personal and societal, but they both have to be present, and especially the personal one, because that's the one we really can control, in order to have a healthy relationship with food. So really looking at if we want to have this healthy, really natural relationship with food and have food peace, we also have to have the body acceptance piece. So our mission is really to help people just change their internal dialogue and really focus on how to find that peace by being mindful of the way they talk about themselves, talk to themselves, just how they heal from trauma and all the messaging that they received about their bodies from little nuanced messaging to, severe trauma that a lot of people struggle with. And just now we're passionate about teaching the moms of today a lot about what we've learned professionally, because I've really been noticing how much the moms of today are in this really unique space. Like, we grew up with the moms who were introduced to Weight Watchers in the 60s, who were introduced to like the low fat in the 80s. And that's when the big, like Pepsi, turkey companies, some of these big companies started all of a sudden introducing diet products. And so that was like the marketing wave of the time. And so that's what our kind of the next generation above us really absorbed. And there's no counter information out there at that time. So now we're kind of in this unique space of like, we grew up in this way, but now we're reading all the research about how that went sideways on mental health. And we are realizing we do not want to raise our children like that. So I just feel like we're this really unique bridge. And so I think kind of that combination of the personal experiences, the professional experiences has led us to being really passionate about this topic.
So do you have children of your own?
I do. I have 3.
And do you have daughters?
I have 1.
Now, how do you kind of avoid talking about weight in your house, or how do you approach that? You avoid it altogether?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really need to be discussed. It's just a number, it's pretty arbitrary. So yeah.
I saw this really cute meme, and it had a little girl standing on a scale, and she was looking at the number, and then she said, "Look, Mom, look how strong I am." And it was like,
Aw.
50 pounds or whatever. And
Mhm.
they were just saying like how neat to twist that whole, dialogue.
Perspective, yeah.
And if we could have twisted it, when we were younger, we could have embraced our bodies a lot earlier.
Mhm. Well, yeah, I mean, when we go bring our kids to the doctors and we look at their growth charts of their height, that's such a neutral number. Like, oh, you're 48 inches.
Mhm.
Okay, like
Right,
whatevs, like
yeah.
whatevs. But then the number of the scale all of a sudden holds all these connotations. Now, for children, it holds zero connotations. From adults, it holds connotations. So we're putting those connotations on our children with our tone of voice, with our ooh ah, like our vibes, our energy, our energy around the foods they pick and the foods they eat. So our kids are growing up just being like, I like these foods and this is the numbers. They have no connotations. It's the social constructs and the messages that we've absorbed that make everything so much more complicated for them.
Yeah.
So for people who
no.
have, say, like an eating disorder, is that, because I've heard people say like it's a genetic thing, like I got it from my grandma or whatever. Like, is that true, or is it more of a mentality thing? Like, is it something that they initially inherit?
So we like to say like genetics, this is a terrible analogy, but genetics loads the gun, but like environment can pull the trigger type of concept. But the concept being like you're more predisposed. So how I like to explain it in a less violent way is is that like how we react emotionally to situations tends to be a little bit more genetic. If we got the hot-headed mom, we kind of tend to be hot-headed a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So an eating disorder always comes second. There's always something that precipitates that. So it's either trauma, it's a mood disorder, it's perfectionism, it's an anxiety disorder, things like that. And then all of a sudden the eating disorder feels like a way to kind of manage and navigate that in a maladaptive way, right? It's a maladaptive coping skill, but it's a coping skill. So the coping skills we tend to gravitate towards tend to be more genetic, and you're more predisposed to going towards those. So yes, there's the genetic piece, but then there's also the environmental. Like I said, I grew up with the grandma and the mom. And so genetically, for sure, passed down, but also environmentally, I didn't go through as strong messaging because of my generational culture. And I just didn't have as much of the anxiety and OCD that they both have. So there's kind of been a little bit of a dilution of it as the generations went down.
Now, I have a question, and you don't have to answer if you don't feel comfortable.
Okay.
But your mother and your grandmother, were they trying to lose weight, or they were just trying not to gain weight?
Always trying to lose.
Always trying to lose. Okay. And would you say that they had anything to worry about? Because I feel like growing up, my mom was always trying to lose weight, but there were times where I was like, "You're crazy. You look great." Did you see them as,
Having an issue,
having to lose weight, or?
I know it's so complicated, right? Because there's so many social constructs around body sizes. So it's such a delicate answer. I mean, personally, I think they look, great. But I think they were so entrenched in, you got to look like the Victoria's Secret models, and there's no other options. So, and I think that they also both talk a lot about, they both developed a lot earlier than their peers. Okay. So they both were very, very tall, and they both were very large chested. And then they also had just more curves at way younger ages. And so I think that little seed got planted so early on for them that like it really struggled for them to see themselves as a certain, like a different size, because they always felt like the big person in the room. So that was always really interesting for me to kind of look at. They would talk a lot about that, like, well, our genetics are just that, we're the bigger person, or, we're just this and that. And I didn't really inherit that body size and that body shape too much, but it was definitely something that was talked about. I'm not sure if you guys ever grew up with the messages of like, oh, be careful because we can't eat like that. I mean, because of this, or, be careful because
it's
you don't want,
catch up to you.
yes,
Yeah.
or you don't want grandma's hips, or like whatever it is that all that messaging, and you're like, I just woke up.
Yeah. Why are you telling me all this?
I'm hungry. I just want to eat.
Right. What's catch up mean?
I remember when I was little, it wasn't that my mom was telling us like to be careful with actually, I was a little overweight when I was little. So I think she would start telling my brother and I, be careful with what you eat, or you shouldn't eat so much. But we were already, like, when I look at pictures now, we were heavier. But it wasn't because she was telling us, I want you to be smaller. It was more that she was saying, because like, we have high blood pressure in our family. Like, you don't, it wasn't more of like a size or a physical thing. It was more of just like
diabetes or something like that. Like,
that's what she was more afraid of versus us losing the weight. Does that make sense?
But my curiosity would be how that impacted your decision making in the moment. Were you like, oh, okay, I'll stop eating? Or were you like, what are you talking about? This tastes good.
When I was little, like, it went in one ear and out the other. But now that I'm older, I'm very more conscious about what I eat, and I'm constantly exercising. But I think it's been ingrained in my head, like, since I was little, that now I'm always working out and trying to eat healthy. But then, like, I still splurge, and I don't want to send off the wrong message to, like, my kids that I'm exercising to be skinny, or that I'm eating the way I'm eating because I want to be skinny. You know what I mean?
It's more like because you want to be healthy.
Because some kids out there get that impression, like they see it in social media or whatever, that we need to look a certain size. And I don't want to portray that image to my kids that, oh, mom's working out and eating a salad because she wants to look like that.
So are you guys familiar with the health at every size paradigm?
No.
Okay. So it's a book by Lindo Bacon, just groundbreaking research on just all the different components of what makes up health, and amazing research that they did on the fact that basically health can exist in every size, because health has much more to do than the number on a scale. So the book is awesome, very medical textbook type of research-based book, but it's also become a social justice component, where there is the health at every size and the size diversity movement. And the whole concept, again, is that it's not that, like, there is health at every size, but there can be health at every size, and not to look at the external package and claim health. So if you're concerned about diabetes, because there's a genetic component on that, okay, but have a holistic view as to what maybe manages diabetes. It's not just about the number on the scale at all. Same with blood pressure, same with heart issues, all kinds of stuff. Like, so I think when we want to move our bodies and we want to exercise and we want to eat certain foods, great, because they might make us feel good, but there's also health in other ways. Health is also a good night's sleep. It's also water. It's also eating the ice cream cone with your children on a hot summer day. Health is the run, and health is the nap. So, I think the big thing that we can try to do to heal that age-old concept about eating healthy and then not eating healthy is by really looking at it and being like, you know what, health is a really broad term. And sometimes it really is healthy for me to actually gain some weight because my body needs it right now, or it's coming off of a time where my hormones took a toll on it. And there's just so many different genetic components to it. And then also realizing when we're modeling health for our children, health is not just a food choice. Health is also the relationship with food. Health is also the mindset we have about ourselves. Health is celebrating with our family and having the birthday cake. Like, there's so many different components to health. So if you kind of broaden that concept, that helps a little bit.
I like that. So am I hearing you correctly when you're saying if we're hormonal, we can give into those, feed into those urges,
Or
monthly?
is it bad that we're using it as an excuse?
Sometimes I have like a monster inside of me and I'm like, nope, there's no, forget it. Just eat it all.
So if you'll let me, the two things you guys just said about the excuse and the give in are kind of diet culture terms, technically.
Okay.
So technically the concept of being like, we believe that all foods fit.
Mhm.
All foods have a place, and we can eat what we want, especially if we have the resources to, and access to. So all foods fit. There's a place for all foods. And so therefore, how do we decide what we want to eat and when we want to eat and how much we want to eat? Instead of going through the, well, I shouldn't, or oh, I don't know if that's healthy or not, or I'm trying to be good. Those are all diet culture beliefs. There's no sin in eating. There's no like good or bad, like save that for church and just go to the kitchen and kind of see like, what does my body want? My body's communicating to me. Your body might be communicating to you that you need carbohydrates, and that's because you've done a ton of thinking and studying. Carbohydrates is the main macronutrient that your brain burns when you're thinking and you're studying. So if your body's saying, I need carbohydrates, maybe you've been working really hard on writing your podcast and you need some carbs. Like your body will communicate to you. And yeah, so during your period when your body needs chocolate, there's absolutely genetic reasons why your body is setting those signals, and they're actually very wonderful and healthy. We actually did an entire episode called Your Period, where we brought on a hormone healing expert, and she talked all about the different pieces of it. And it was fascinating. I wish I could quote it, but it was medical. I'm the therapist in the group. So
I'll have to link that episode.
Definitely.
Is that almost like, you know how when you're pregnant and you crave all those crazy things? Is that almost the same as that? And then
your body's protecting you. Your body's communicating with you. It's telling you what you need.
But is it that we need it in moderation, or it's okay to splurge on that chocolate and eat the whole sleeve of Oreos?
So
you know what I mean?
That is where your mind is probably overruling your body.
Okay.
So your body doesn't usually want a whole sleeve of Oreos. But if you do not let your body have it for a long time because your mind has said it's bad, then when you go to sit down and you think, oh, I'm cheating, I'll be better tomorrow, your mind is then going to be like, eat all of it because I don't trust you to let me have this again tomorrow. So if you can give yourself permission to eat the Oreos whenever you want, suddenly you'll be like, I'm not really in the mood. Or, oh, yeah, I want 2 or 3. Or like, oh, now I've got chocolate in my teeth. Like, I'm moving on to something else. Like, you end up having a much more organic relationship with it when the permission is unconditionally there at all times.
That makes total sense.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That is interesting, and especially when you start listening to your body. I was obsessed with having cereal and milk every night and every breakfast. But I noticed that the milk would upset my stomach. Like I would get super gassy, and who wants to go to sleep super gassy?
Right.
So, so I started kind of cutting it, but it wasn't because I'm like, oh, I don't want to gain weight from it. It was like, because I don't like the way it makes me feel after, and then some foods, like certain seafoods, I know that it's going to give me the bubble guts, so I know when I can eat something like that and when it's worth the risk and when it's not worth the risk.
Right. So, and you probably don't feel deprived from
No.
those foods.
No, because I haven't banned any of them. I haven't said, no, I can't. Yeah.
So that's what we call the intuitive eating, one of the intuitive eating concepts and principles. That's another amazing book by Evelyn Tribole and Elise Resch. And so that's one of those concepts. Like you don't feel deprived from those because you intuitively decided that doesn't feel right for my body. Mm-hmm. But when you looked at the Oreos and said, oh, I want those, my body's saying that those are good, but my mind is saying there's rules about those that you can't let yourself have. Then next thing you know, you're eating 10 of them and you're going, oh, my body didn't want 10. Like you lose the intuition when you're up in your head. You really have to trust your body's signals and really listen to the body's signals, because that's why it's called a relationship with your body, because there's two people. Like, your body's communicating with you and your mind's communicating. The two of them are working together.
That's so interesting.
So for someone who's like technically obese, like I've heard, well, I don't know, maybe it's like in shows or something where like they say I have a relationship with food, like someone who's heavier set or like just they can't stop eating and they say it's something they need, but they're obviously not healthy according to their doctor. Is that something because it's their mentality, or?
A lot of it is emotional. Well, some people say that when they overeat, it's also emotional eating. Like if they're sad, then they turn to food. Is that completely separate from her question? I don't want to split you up into two little.
No, I mean, I think what you're talking about is the eating disorder umbrella.
Oh, that would fall under an eating disorder.
Yes, right. So the concept of, food is a legal drug. Food is an easily accessible drug. It does have a chemical reaction on our brain. And we were also blessed with taste buds. And so food tastes good, and there's pleasure in food, and there's an emotional connection to food. Again, to the, cliche example of the birthday party or the family picnic or Thanksgiving, like it's all food related and it's pleasant. So that's great. But yeah, anything can be taken from moderation to an emotional struggle. I mean, a research study to point out to maybe answer that as well would be, I forget his name off the top of my head, but a long time ago, the government hired a head researcher to basically study sizes and the quote unquote obesity term, and kind of figure out like what's going on with the population. And after all his years of research and all his data, he came up with the conclusion that says people aren't obese because they don't know better. It's because of trauma. And almost every single one of the patients in his clinical study had some sort of trauma, and dieting can cause trauma, that restriction of the body and the deprivation, and then the binging that comes and the yo-yoing of that. So there was always an emotional piece that people could kind of tie back to.
Wow,
I can see that. Yeah, it totally does. Totally does.
So how can we find body acceptance by exploring our genetics?
Yeah, so this is where Tina would be very helpful because she's got the science mind. She's the dietitian. Okay. But I will pull from some of the episodes we've done. We just did an entire series of the mom bod. So we took people through, like we talked about your butt, your belly, your boobs. We talked about your genes, your hormones, your period, your fertility. We kind of talked about all that. So we did a lot of genetic pieces there. So I'll pull from some of that stuff. But I mean, the bottom line is our genes, our genetics play a powerful role in how we look, obviously. And so understanding our genetic components is really key to the radical acceptance of the external package. And the radical acceptance is this, it is what it is. And body acceptance in the beauty of all of our unique, external packages. But understand the genetic components is helpful because, like we already touched on, hormones. I mean, hormones have a huge impact on so much on our acne, on our where we hold weight, on how we feel, and then therefore how we eat. So there's that little piece. Like when you talk about the mom belly, the postpartum belly, I mean, there's the diastasis recti, the splitting of the abdominal muscles that can lead to the mom pooch. Like, does my belly look different? Like, it's more like your muscles split, As we age, we lose our skin elasticity. And so there's the aging component to always look at, and that can be more rapid or come earlier according to our genetics and our DNA. Our weight fluctuations and where our body distributes weight. Estrogen, I mean, that lovely hormone that just leads to, depending on your hormone levels, leading to where we hold on to fat in our bellies or our hips. Prolactin, the hormone that our body produces when we're nursing, that has us hold on to belly fat so we can produce milk and feed our babies. So there's that genetic component. And kind of going back to the research study, cortisol levels and our stress levels, they can impact our body sizes and shapes. There's a lot of genetic pieces to how stress and the hormone piece, and then also how we react to stress and our relationship with food and exercise, like how that also impacts things. So The bottom line is really understanding the multiple layers of our body's internal working and learning how our bodies react to different environmental stressors can really give ourselves so much compassion. And in compassion, there's so much more room for body acceptance if we're not being self-critical.
So how can we keep track of that? Like maybe journaling when we have certain emotions and then seeing how we reacted. Like, okay, we ate a whole sleeve of Oreos because I got in an argument with my mom or something, you know, is that
Sure.
something that is like considered something that would help you if you journal?
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that you're talking about is what we call separating out food and feelings. So if we can kind of view our body as a vehicle to our soul, which is one of my favorite quotes, then you can look at the fact that like there's our food and our need for fuel, and the kitchen can be a gas station that we pull into and we fuel up, and we have to fuel up with enough fuel to get us through our day and to get us from point A to point B. And again, the blessing of taste buds, we also want to eat what tastes good and what's satisfying for us, which is another genetic component. Taste buds are genetic and cultural as well, what kind of foods we enjoy. And then we try to kind of pull out of our fuel stop and keep going on the road because the body is just a vehicle for our soul, and our feelings, our emotions, our relationships, parenting, all of those things are things that need so much love and attention and compassion and healing and therapy and journaling and singing and music and art and all that stuff. Like there's so much expression and emotional expression that we need to find. And how can we do that without the food? Now, emotional eating's normal. I mean, every movie where the girl gets dumped, she's eating the Ben and Jerry's on the couch. Like, yeah, we've all been there. That's totally normal. But if you can kind of try to live a life that's separating out the food and the feelings, the food is your fuel. You choose the fuel that works best for you and tastes best for you. And then you also handle the feelings and your emotions and life stressors in other coping skills. That's kind of maybe a piece that you're thinking along the lines of when you ask that.
Okay. Now, do you think that when you say like use it as like a gas station of fuel, so what if there's someone who they're fueling their body, but the way that they're eating, they may think it's correct, whatever that may be, like, I don't know, just throw something out there, like the Oreos, the burgers, like all that stuff. And that's how they fuel their body. But what if that makes them not feel well? Should they just change those? I asked that because I recently like switched my whole eating style for health issues. And I just changed up a ton of things, and I feel much better now than I did before. Which, and I, in a sense, I thought I was eating the correct stuff, but I had to take out a lot of things. So how do you know what you should fuel your body with versus what you shouldn't, because the way it's going to make you feel?
And to add on to that, sometimes you don't even know there's a difference because maybe our whole life we've been eating certain things that have always made us feel gassy or bloated, or, you know, and
we
then
think that's how you're supposed to
and then we
feel.
think that's normal, you know, and then you go a week or a month with eating different foods, and then you're like, hey, I don't feel that anymore. And then that's the only way that you would know that makes you that those type of foods make you feel different.
Well, I think you kind of almost bring us back to the health concept. Like health is a broad term. So, you know, health can be our energy levels, our fatigue, like how we're sleeping, how we're focusing. So if you feel like those things are off, and maybe there are tweaks that you feel personally you can make without being triggered by diet culture beliefs of like, I'm doing this to look a certain way, or I'm doing this because those foods are deemed bad and I want to be good, then yeah, that's understanding your genetics and understanding that health is more than a number on a scale. So for each person, this intuitive eating concept is going to be unique and different. And for some people, they can eat the certain foods and they do feel fine. Their energy levels not impacted. And for other people, they are. So, you know, there's a lot of wiggle room there. which is why we, again, try not to have foods as labeled as good or bad, because for some people,
it works.
you know, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And for some people, you know, for some people, the salad might actually ordering the salad might be bad because they need more macronutrients than the salad offers, or they have a history of deprivation and that triggers in their mind the eating disorder stuff. Or they are nursing and the salad's not going to give them enough energy and fuel to produce milk. I know for me that I had to really just like pack in all those foods in order to produce enough milk. So yeah, that's where we kind of look at the genetics and each person's personal relationship with it.
And Roni, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, do you feel like it always goes back to that diet lifestyle though? Because I noticed like my whole life, like I always have people like if we go out to eat or something, they're like, "Are you on a diet? Are you on a diet? Are you on a diet?" And I'm like, "No."
Is that because you were eating like
eat.
salads, or you were eating like a bird, or
no, just the way that I eat. Like I've always just like been so picky and like. And everyone always asks me that, and I try to like get them out of that, especially because my kids, like, I don't want them to think like, oh, mom's always on a diet. No, this is just how mom is accustomed to eating now. But I feel like it always goes back to, you know, that diet place.
Do you think there's like a tone in their voice or judgment or their own like, please don't be on a diet because I want to order the burger? Like what's going on in their heads, do you think?
I just want to eat pizza with you, Mom.
Right? I don't know. No, and I definitely like splurge on some things. But I noticed like, and this has been literally going on like all my life, I think. I've just been like a picky eater. So now that you're talking, I'm like, do people think I have an eating disorder or something? Because of the way
I was gonna ask you that you didn't know that all of these new foods that you've been trying were going to make you feel so good that you were going to be able to get off of all of these your medications for your rheumatoid arthritis. But how did you figure out this new eating style? Is like, did you research it and then you thought, okay, this is gonna make me be able to get off all my medications, or were you doing it for like weight loss? Or
no, I was strictly doing it I went into it reading like holistic medical books, telling you how to let your food be your fuel better, basically, and things that you can change that may help with like sleep, energy, all that stuff was going into it definitely to help me on the health aspect. And it ended up helping me. I ended up getting off of my medication, all kinds of things. So it was more of, I was looking for the holistic way because I got tired of going to the doctor and them throwing this medication at me, this medication, this medication. And I'm like, I don't want to live on medication for the rest of my life. So that was my reasoning in going into it. And it was totally had like nothing to do with weight. It was just strictly like, I want to get my health under wraps or whatever.
So then same question to you then, like, do you feel deprived from those foods that you don't eat as much anymore?
Not at all.
Not even at the beginning, like when you first transitioned to, like, you know how you had and you had to do all raw vegetables or all raw foods. Remember you were doing that?
And I think I didn't feel deprived because, like I said, I think I have already become so accustomed to it that I'm at the point now where if I do want to eat an Oreo, then I'll go upstairs and eat an Oreo. Like I'm like, okay, whatever, you know? So I don't get to the point where I'm like, you know, just dying to have it, or I'll have it. I won't fully, you know, deprive myself. If I get a mood to like eat something, then I'll just eat it. So I think that's why
but you don't think, oh, this threw me off completely of my goal. Like you're not hard on yourself after like, oh, now I have to wait till Monday to start eating better.
No, because I don't go into it. Like, I feel like me like splurging on something like Oreos or whatever the case may be, I'm not looking at it like it's going to throw me off or something. Cause I guess because I'm not really going into it with like weight loss in mind. And I'm like, well, I don't see how this one meal can throw me off. But if I do eat it and then I feel a certain way, like if I ate it and then I start feeling achy or something like that, then I know, okay, maybe I should stay away from that. But if I eat it and I'm perfectly fine, then I just go on.
I think that's a good example of the intuitive eating concept, because all foods fit, and you're figuring out where the foods fit for you and how much and when and how often. So you're like, the Oreos fit. I just know that if I eat them maybe every single day, I don't feel good. And again, for a much deeper genetic reason than I don't feel good because I feel guilty. Like, you're talking about something so much more complex, which I want listeners to like really understand. That it is an intuitive kind of concept if you're talking about like that. If you start saying like, I can't eat those because those are bad, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, you can't stop thinking about the Oreo, and it's the elephant in the room, the Oreo in the room.
Poor Oreos.
It's for Oreos. Like, we're not going to get a brand sponsorship from them.
Right? Or maybe we can.
Oreos, I eat you.
Then you're talking about that mental like war in your head.
Okay.
So I think again, what a big piece we're talking about is like, if we can take away the language of like, shouldn't eat that and then splurge, and instead going, all foods can fit, and therefore, what's my body communicating with me that it wants? Because my body doesn't have food rules. It just has this communication messaging for me. And so if I can listen to what my body wants, then I'm able to fuel it in the way that works best for me. And if your body's not telling you to eat those foods because it's going to get inflammation in your joints and you're going to be in pain, then your body's like, no, don't go there. And you can trust it, and you're not feeling deprived by that.
Exactly.
I always give the little silly example to my clients when I'm talking about this, about I'm super sensitive to caffeine. So like I can't eat anything chocolate, even like I'm so sensitive after 3:00 in the afternoon. Like even 3:00 might be pushing it, depending on how thick the chocolate is. It might have to be 2. But I always tell people, like, I don't feel deprived because I look at that and I'm going, I choose sleep. And
over
not be
this.
up till 4 a.m. over this. But you better believe I'll have my brownie with my coffee in the morning.
Oh my God, I love it.
Because I like it. I like chocolate. Like, why would I say all the food fits? I just figure out kind of where
what time it fits.
And that's where my body and I have developed a little relationship.
That is so smart.
So you need to listen to your body, basically.
Yeah, and my kids will say, like, Mommy, aren't you going to have a brownie with us tonight? I'll be like, oh, no, Mommy had hers for breakfast and they'll be like, oh, Mommy wants to sleep tonight. And like, it's not like, oh no, I shouldn't eat that, or like, I don't want to be bad. And that's what I heard growing up. No, I need to be good. Mom, no, Mommy can't have that because, Mommy's trying to, lose some weight, or Mommy's trying to be good, or like, blah, blah, blah. Mom, bathing suit season's coming up. No, it's just like, yeah, Mommy wants the brownie for breakfast because then I can keep up with you little monkeys. And we're going to put the caffeine where it works.
Okay. Now, how do you feel about intermittent fasting?
Oh, I call that sleeping.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
you're
you consider that your sleeping hours?
Yeah, like I just feel like, again, that's a food rule. That's a diet rule. Like, your body's not on a clock. Your body's got its own little internal clock that is going to communicate with you when it's hungry. Why should a number on the wall tell you not to eat? So again, that's part of this diet culture thing, where diet culture has made us feel like we can't trust our bodies. Like, if we let our bodies go, then like things will, so we have to take the control back. And really, that's not true. It's dieting that's made us not trust our bodies, and our bodies not trust us. Dieting can slow down your metabolism. Dieting can impact your ability to feel hunger and fullness and all these things because you've tried to override your internal mechanisms. So if you kind of get back to this body trust and be like, well, body, are you hungry at 10 o'clock at night? Well, it could be no, because as moms are running around, we're exhausted and falling into bed. So no, I'm sleeping. I'm not hungry. Or yeah, I am hungry. I'm pregnant. I remember eating granola bars at like 1 o'clock in the morning when I was pregnant because I was starving. My body was communicating to me that I need the food. So no, I don't believe that we should consult a clock or measuring cups or serving sizes or any numbers. I really think that our body is an expert at doing that. It's just that for so long we have not trusted our body to communicate with us.
And you had mentioned I know I'm gonna murder a diastasis,
This
something about your
diastasis
muscle.
recti.
Yes. How do you know if you have that? Do you check that like with your doctor, your OB?
You can check
They
the OB
usually would tell you, I think, after you have, like, it's like
Oh, really?
sticks out, right? Like it almost looks like you're still pregnant sometimes.
sometimes severe ones. They never told me. I had a friend who was trained in it. It's the split between your abdominal walls. You can, if you like lay down on your back and like do like a little half curl, you can feel if you can get your fingers like in between your abdominal wall. And so it could be like a 2-finger, like a 4 fingers, like a severe split.
Oh, man.
Things like that. So some people will develop hernias and like their intestines can bulge out. And then other people, it's just like the abdominal wall is a little split. So like, yeah, your muscles are relaxed. I mean, you just got pregnant, shrunk,
Right.
you know? So
now, if you don't treat that, it won't just gradually go back to normal over time?
no, some will. I'm not a doctor, but some will. But I think a PT is a huge thing that a lot of people do to treat that. I know Tina went through PT for it and healed it because hers was a 4-finger split, I think.
Is that the same as when you have a cesarean and they cut the muscles, or that's totally different?
No, that's different. But this is a cesarean section. The scar tissue can adhere to your uterine lining and then also adhere to this other skin layers, and the whole thing can adhere, which almost develops a little bit of like the mom pooch too, because basically like it's not, things aren't moving around. It's like this is stuck and then this is up here. Good thing you're videoing this because I use my hands a lot. But yeah, so there's again genetic pieces. Like there's so much that's going on inside, and all we're seeing is like, oh, it's bathing suit season. I don't know, like I look like the girls on Instagram, and it's like, girl.
So if our mothers had a mom pooch, are we highly likely to also keep our mom pooch?
I guess it depends. Yeah, it depends what the genetic reason was for theirs. I mean, you might not have as much of an abdominal split. I know my mom had 4 C-sections. I had 1. You know, like that's a big difference. The trauma on the abdominal walls. You know,
I had 3. So then I feel good that I have this mommy kangaroo out.
Oh, 100%. I mean, your scar tissue's here and your skin's like, we're not moving.
Yeah. They have
like we can't move.
When I had my second baby, I think the doctor literally, they were like, after we pulled him out, we had to go in there and scrape like off the scar tissue because I had so much, because I had my kids so far apart. Like they were 6 years apart. So all that scar tissue from the 6 years. Yeah. So,
interesting.
So how do you recommend that people, our listeners, and even us change our mentality to accept our gene size?
Yeah, so the internal dialogue is big. I mean, a lot of the little catch yourself in the words you're using, the language you're using that we've talked about so far this episode is a big piece. If you guys want more information on that, I referenced Intuitive Eating book. That is an interesting place to start, especially for people who have had a history of dieting. If they haven't, then that book might not be a 100% perfect fit, but there's lots of other books out there that are great. But yeah, the internal dialogue, the way we think about food, the way we feel like we should or should not exercise, we switch that to what we call joyful movement. Like you move your body because it feels good. And so do what feels good and don't do what doesn't feel good. So some of the internal dialogue is the big piece. Just surrendering to the fact that our bodies are amazing. They're powerful. They're awesome. Depending on our genetic background and all the pieces of that, they are what they are, and that's awesome. We need a very diverse world with diverse people in it, and that includes body sizes, and so that's awesome. Another piece I always encourage is trying to have more awareness of the social justice components to body discrimination. You know, there's the weight stigma. Do some research on why a lot of us believe that the BMI is BS. There's a lot of fat phobia in our culture. There's racism that has strong links to all of this. A great book on that is The Body's Not an Apology by Sonia Renee Taylor. That's a great book. Body Positive Power by Megan Jane Crabbe is a great book. The Health at Every Size book that I talked about, that goes a lot into the discrimination that occurs in our medical system. Fearing the Black Body by Sabrina String. She's a UCI professor. That's an amazing book that talks about the systemic roots there. So there's so much social justice that basically kind of prefers people to look a certain way. And that fuels a $72 billion beauty industry. And they want our money, and they want us to hate ourselves because that's how they make money. And they're going to use whatever they can to get us to feel like we're not good enough. So I just think that is such a powerful piece for so many people to be aware of.
Thank you. We're going to link all of those books.
Sorry, that was a lot of books, but
no, that's okay. That works.
Okay. So with you growing up with your mom and your grandmother focused on weight, how did you dodge that? You know, how did you kind of rise above it?
You know, I think I always had a piece of curiosity about it. Like kind of watching from, you know, when you watch something from afar and you can kind of stay removed a little bit. And I don't know why, but I think that curiosity allowed me to stay a little bit more removed. And because I saw how miserable they were. I mean, these weren't happy, secure people. These are people who my mom will wear pants and a t-shirt to the pool with my kids. Like she won't put the bathing suit on. She doesn't think she's worthy. You know, my grandmother kept a notepad by her phone growing up where she counted every bite she ate. She wrote it all down.
Oh, wow.
Every time she would eat a bite of sweets, she would just moan, "Oh, it tastes so good, but I can't eat it." And she would sometimes spit it out.
Oh, no.
Wow.
Like, so I kind of grew up being like, that doesn't look fun. Like, I don't think I want to hate my body. Is there a choice I have? Do I have a choice? Because I don't. So I was always kind of, I think, having that curiosity piece. But again, I can be unique in that. And a lot of people who grew up in that family environment don't, you know, get off scotch-free like that. And then I dove into it very quickly in my undergraduate studies and really started studying just the impact of advertising on body image. So that was a big kind of eye-opening piece of just realizing like, whoa. There is so much of again, kind of the social injustice component to all of this that always made me very fascinated and wanted to become kind of an advocate for that. And of course, the big piece to becoming an advocate was for me to do some of the healing work within myself and unpacking some of that. So that's a short answer. I know it's complicated, but that's a short answer. And then also, again, the social justice component, like I was also born into a thinner body and a white cisgendered body. So I have not experienced firsthand a lot of the discrimination that so many experience. And so I think, you know, that thin privilege, it kind of kept me a little bit more protected. So I have so much just empathy for the people who do walk down the street and experience discrimination and stigma. And that it's, I know for so many listening, they're going to be like, yeah, it must be nice to change your internal dialogue. Like it's a lot harder than that. So I always kind of try to throw that out there.
So I've been hearing a lot about the thin privilege. Did you ever struggle because you were thin? Because I feel like I hear a lot of people who have stories growing up where they couldn't gain weight and they wanted to gain weight, and people would think that they were bulimic and they were not bulimic. So they also had stereotypes put against them or maybe bullied because they were too thin, you know, and people thought that they were weak and you know what I mean? Like, did you have any of those kind of experiences?
Yeah, I was shoved in lockers in 6th grade because people thought it was funny that I could fit. And then they would go to class. But I mean, you know, it's not that big of a deal. But yeah, I mean, there's discrimination.
That is a big deal. I would be so upset if my child was getting shoved in lockers.
Are you choking on a mimosa?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's discrimination of all body types. People like to make comments about people's bodies, you know, like, oh, you're so lucky you could eat that, is what I heard a lot. And I'm like, oh, I am. And that, or like, oh, I hate you, you're so thin. It's like, I'm sorry. Like, so, you know, there, a big piece of this, again, I do not want to tout that, like, there's a backhanded compliment in those. And so therefore I'm not going to pretend like I understand the discrimination that a lot of children experience on the playground when they're in larger bodies. But yeah, our society loves to comment on the external package. And I just try to squash that as much as I can in my own dialogue in my house, and try to encourage people to do the same.
So you do start pretty young with your children on their dialogue, and by telling them, do you have key things that you tell your children?
Yeah, I like to tell people that, I'd like to tell my children that people are born into all different sizes and bodies. And so my son said recently, Mom, I know why that person's fat. And I said, oh, okay. Also, we need to go back, and I'm curious about the word fat and where you learned that, but he was like, yeah, they have different size bones in their body. And I'm like, that is correct.
Oh, that's a good one.
Like, you have been listening. But you know, again, but then he also goes to school and hears other messaging. But so a big piece that I've tried to do is have those conversations. Everyone's born in different bodies. You know, all foods are healthy. They all do different things for us. And again, there's a lot of things that are just mental health. I want my kid to eat the cake at the party because that is healthy for him to be part of a broader celebration and group situation. So yeah, we talk a lot about just the beauty of diversity, and diversity is, you know, multiple layers of people. And so we have lots of different books about kids of different sizes, and kids of different colors, and kids of different ethnic backgrounds and religions. And we talk a lot about just everyone is so different, and that does include body size. And so it's more than just whether or not your teacher says sugar is bad. Like it's more complicated than that, is what I always kind of try to talk about.
I've heard that, where kids come up to me and ice cream's bad, and I'm like, what? And
You're
then
like,
they go and
it's
eat ice cream, and I'm like, oh, okay.
No, it's got calcium in it. It's great. It's good for your bones.
I just wonder where, like, they clearly got it from their parent, or maybe their dentist, or, you know what I mean? Something where they're telling them don't eat sugar or something like that. Okay. So I have a situation at home where because I grew up with a mom who was constantly on her weight, you know, focused on her weight, I try to not do that. But I noticed that it's the opposite. Like, my husband is more focused on his physique, and my kids may not hear me saying, oh, I'm so this, I'm so that, but they hear him complaining. And I'm like, I wonder how that's going to change their dialogue in their head. Especially my sons hearing their father say that, you know? So I try to tell them, like, hey, I'm trying not to say those things because I don't want my daughter to hear that, but you have to work on yourself so that you don't have our sons thinking the same thing because they look up to you. Any word of advice on how I can really get that to soak in on him?
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point, and that is that men are subject to diet culture messaging too. You know, toxic masculinity is a real thing. So yeah, men are told that to be attractive, they have to be muscular and lean and tall and strong and all of those things. And then you have the boys that are short, and the boys that are round, and the boys who are unathletic, and the boys that are softer, that don't have the six pack. And we're seeing an entire wave of boys suffering from body image distress and eating disorders. And people always think it's like the thin white girl that's got the bulimia. And it's like, it is so much broader than that. So I think you bring up a good point, and that is that, there's a chance that he is struggling with his own definition of what it means to be a man in our society and what masculinity looks like and sounds like and feels like. And so there is an identity piece that your husband's probably kind of grappling with too. Mm-hmm. And your sons will grapple with that as well.
I don't want them to grapple with it.
I know.
Yeah.
That good kids books Frank Murphy wrote too. A Boy Like You and A Girl Like You, one of each. So those are kind of there's some good boy body image books out there.
Okay.
That you can kind of start, because you're right. It's important to start having the conversations with the boys too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and especially because we have different. Our fathers had different sizes, and I know some of the boys in my family, they have a hard time putting on weight, so they can't be this buff dude because they are genetically on the thinner side, And so I don't know which son is going to get that. And I just don't want them to feel less manly or less than,
right.
The others. So, well, thank you. I feel like you dropped so much knowledge on this topic.
Yeah, that was great.
Really good.
Thank you, Rachel, for sharing all of your stories with us too. How can our listeners find you? Do you have a website or Instagram that we can tag?
Sure. Yeah, so my website for my business in Southern California is rachelcoleman.com. And Tina, if you want to work with a dietitian in Texas, and she's also licensed in one other state, but I forget. Sorry, Tina, Nevada, I think. That's tlbnutritiontherapy.com. And then our podcast is Mom Jeans, GENES, and there is a website for that, momjeansthepodcast.com, and our Instagram handles are @momjeansthepodcast. So that can be a launching point, and then you can find our separate profiles there as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you again.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. That was a fun little therapy session we all got to have.
Definitely.
Thanks so much for hanging out with us. If you want to catch up on our previous episodes, visit mamasmimosas.com, where you'll get access to all of our podcast show notes, our YouTube videos, and our private Facebook group, where we chat with you about each episode topic and host live Q&As with our fave mom tribe. Can't wait to see you there.